So before the break, we asked what percentage of ethnic minority children up for adoption never find a permanent family. And the answer is 20%.
And those that do find a home will wait 3 times longer than white children, which makes it all very depressing, doesn't it, to see those statistics. Welcome back to the Right Stuff Extra with me, Gabby Logan. Still to come, Dr. Rada is back with her open surgery. So if you've got any aches or pains or ailments, give us a call. 0207 173 5555 is the number. And Dr. Rada will be on hand with some expert advice. Francesca Pollini and her husband Rick deliberately chose not to have children of their own because they believe passionately in adoption. She was taken aback, though, when social workers told her she was unable to adopt in this country. And the process which followed was long, tiring and at times heartbreaking, and led them to Mexico. And she joins us today to tell us of her fascinating story of adoption against all the odds, really, Francesca.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in. And this is all documented in your book as well, which is out at the moment. You were a preferential adopter, you explain in the book. Just explain a bit about what that means, that title entails.
It's a term used for parents who choose to form a family through adoption rather than biologically.
Yeah, because a lot of people that you met couldn't have children.
Couldn't have children, and therefore they chose to have their family through adoption. But for us, it was actually a preferred route into forming our family.
And a little bit there, I said it was about your background, just briefly.
Yeah, I grew up with a biological brother and an adopted brother, and my adopted brother was brought into the family through foster care quite late into our sort of family life. So I was already 8 years old and he was 10. So it's really shaped the way, I guess, the way I see families coming together. And of course, today they come together in all sorts of ways: step parents and surrogate mothers and IVF. You know, it's not that obvious anymore how you bring children into your life. And I guess it sort of shaped the way I see children. And I wanted to really create a family by bringing a child who didn't necessarily get the best start in life into our life.
At foreign adoption as the first.
No, we didn't. We actually wanted to adopt here in the UK because obviously we knew that there's thousands of children at any point in time who are looking for a permanent, stable home. But there were some guidelines at the time, which have now changed, whereby it was practically impossible for white prospective adoptive parents, to adopt any of the black or mixed race or Asian children in this country, which are actually the majority in care available for adoption at the moment. So we were told that the only way to adopt...
Those rules have changed now.
Yeah,
but at that time, you set out then thinking, right, well, we'll go abroad. And where does one begin that journey?
It's quite complicated. It's quite mind-blowing, really. And I think, you know, unless you're kind of educated, stubborn and, you know, determined with everything you've got, it's really quite difficult to make it through. But we were, you know, we did trainings and we did something called the home study where social workers come in and kind of grill you or your friends, your families, your work colleagues and everybody. It is, yes, absolutely. Because, you know, questioning, you know, why do you want to adopt and why from this specific country, etc.
And how did you come to choose Mexico as the country you wanted?
Both Rick and I have travelled a lot, and obviously we've seen a lot of sort of poor countries and destructions, etc. But we also wanted to make sure, because we weren't necessarily sure that we would adopt newborns, that at least one of us could speak the language of the child and all of the officials that we were going to get in touch with. So because I speak Spanish, we kind of first looked at Guatemala, and then Guatemala was closing down with adoptions, and we decided to look at Mexico.
And so who do you go to in the first instance then? When you arrive in
normally
Mexico?
your local authority is your first.
But when you get to Mexico?
When you get to Mexico, you have no idea, because once you've passed the home study in the UK, you're kind of on your own, and there's a lot of confusion and lack of knowledge from various departments in government department to do with adoption as to what to do next. So we kind of literally put our rucksacks on and kind of decided to go to Mexico and do it
just immerse
ourselves,
yourself.
quite literally. Yeah.
One of the heartbreaking stories in there is when you go to an orphanage. And you realise quite quickly that the older children there, because of what was explained to you, are never going to find homes.
And that's both in Mexico and here. It's much, much more difficult, if not impossible, for all the children to get adopted later on in their life, which is why it's so important to try and intervene sooner, really, with them. And so we went through a number of it was a bit like being sucked in a real-life soap opera, really, because we kind of met so many characters that could have come out of a Hollywood movie, really, from a lawyer who actually worked for a US agency who quite literally in a cafe tried to almost sell us babies on order. So he said to us that, you know, he would find a pregnant woman for us, and then if we went back a couple of years later, he would make sure that that woman slept with the same man so that our children looked alike. So, which to me, it's
clearly that wasn't
quite
the
close
first time he'd suggested that to someone.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
He worked, you know, he worked on those premises, and he didn't, you know, he didn't really hide any of it. I mean, he kind of tried to seem like it was all normal and fine.
And this was presumably this goes on. This just isn't one lawyer doing this. This is
no,
big
absolutely.
business out there.
There's tens of them. That's why it's such a complex issue.
So you
adoption.
skewed the opportunity to deal with him.
Absolutely.
But was this the same lawyer who then offered you a baby later on? Where...
No, it wasn't. After that, we met a woman who pretended to commit suicide so that we would adopt her daughter, but she was asking us for more money through the process. But then at the end, it became quite clear that she wanted our money, and then she would have run away with the daughter. So after lots of these sort of different kind of crazy situations, we met an incredible woman called Aurora who ran actually a place of women for women, where women who are pregnant and didn't necessarily want to be and want to leave their babies for adoption can find a home.
And do most of the people who come into contact with her, most of the prospective parents, are they coming from the West? Are they coming from
No, actually,
America?
we were the first non-Mexican couple, or prospective adopters, who knocked on her door. And actually, throughout the whole time, because we met her before these other incidents, she kept on saying to us, I promise you, I will give you your baby. You're not going home without your baby. Because at some point, we thought we were so determined to do the right thing and not to be fooled by these unethical so-called adoptions that
Which is really, you know, you have to keep standing firm.
Absolutely,
but we were led
the wrong path so many ways that at some point we thought, well, maybe we'll just end up having to go home without a child. And she kept on saying to us, no, I promise you I'll send you back with your girl. I know I will. But we had to carry on finding different things because it was hard to believe. And then literally as we were about to move in with the woman who pretended to have committed suicide, she rang us and said, I have your baby. And of course we said, yeah, well. And so we flew to her city, met her at 11 o'clock at night at her house, thinking we're probably going to discuss the process now. And she turned up down the stairs with this baby who is now our daughter.
We have a little look at Gaia, who's there with Daddy Rick, and she's absolutely gorgeous and very charming as well. She's been running around here this morning, keeping everybody on their toes. And just next to her is Luca. And so Luca also obviously came from Mexico.
Absolutely, through the same agency that we adopted Gaia from. And it's incredible because when we saw Gaia the first time, after having met so many children and so many people, we looked at her and we thought, that's her, you know,
and a lot of people
that's
have
our
gone through
daughter.
adoption in this country. It's very, very hard to get a baby, isn't
Absolutely,
it?
yeah.
And in this country, as far as I understand, it's 3 months is the earliest you'll ever get a baby.
Probably a bit later than that, actually.
Even later, yeah. And so for you to have a baby, and there, look, Gaia with her brother at 2 weeks old.
Yes, that's when that's the day we met Luca, actually, that picture. And yeah, I guess it was the quickest preparation you're ever going to get into getting a baby, because that night Aurora said to us, this is your baby. And actually we looked at her and we said, yep, she finally found us. And she said, well, you have to pick her up tomorrow morning. And we had nowhere to stay. We had no
baby
bottles, clothes, dummies, no preparation really. So we went, yeah, okay. So the next morning we literally raided a supermarket. And there we were by 1 o'clock the next day.
I'm so glad that you got the family that is your family,
yeah,
and the right
absolutely,
family for you, and that you brought them in for us to see today. And just very, very briefly, if you were advising somebody else to go down this path, would you say, yeah, do it? It's
Absolutely. I think, you know, to be honest, adoption, I think, is the most life-changing, incredible miracle that can happen to everyone touched. It's not just the children, it's us, it's everybody who's been touched by it. And I don't think, you know, I just want to encourage people who feel very strongly about it to keep on going, and not let bureaucracy come in the way of such an incredible thing.
Thank you, Francesca. Thanks so much for coming in and bringing, as I say, those gorgeous children here today. There might be a little bit of cake left for Gaia at the back.
And me, I hope.
If you've been affected by anything we've been talking about and you want some help, you want some advice, we've got details of helplines and advice on our website, channel5.com/Right Stuff Extra.